Hello, my name is George Bucur, and I'm a Vice President within MarshBerry's Financial Advisory Practice. Focusing on specialty distributors such as MGAs, MGUs, wholesale brokers, and program managers, we are reaching out to you with this initial monthly blog meant to focus on our clients and our prospects that are either operating specialty distributors or involved in, from an ancillary perspective in their operations. What we're trying to do is create a way to connect with our clients in light of the pandemic so that we have more connectivity and are able to share some of the best practices, trends in the M&A marketplace, and trends that we're seeing from the overall industry segment as well. For this first inaugural conversation, we want to talk to you about the trends that we are seeing around M&A, transaction activity, and deal processes. One of the regular questions we receive from clients in the sector is, how has the pandemic impacted the overall transaction environment? What are happening to valuations? Well, specifically, when it comes to the overall transaction activity that we're seeing, transaction activity is lower than what we've seen in the prior several years. You see this year-to-date transaction activity of transactions closed in the industry year-to-date through June 30th, and you'll see that 2020 is trailing that of the prior 3 years. Last year, ultimately finishing with 650 transactions. We expect this year to be somewhere in the 500 to 600 range, ultimately when 2020 comes to a close. You can see that private equity continues to be a significant driver in the sector. And the one trend that we are hearing from private equity as well as other buyers is that the overall appetite and interest still exists with firms in the marketplace. However, as firms had to go from a handshake type of closing where you're meeting in person to a virtual environment, the overall duration of the process, the M&A deal process, was elongated. So while, yes, transaction activity did dip in the months of April, May, early June, we saw a strong rebound in the months of June, July, and into August. So all of that is very positive. Specifically focusing on specialty distributor transactions, you can see that through June, we were at 42 transactions. If you annualize that compared to the annual numbers that you're looking at on this chart, that would lead us to around 84 transactions, which would still be a historical high. Based on MarshBerry's pipeline alone, we expect very much continued interest in specialty distributors. If you look at the overall percentage at which specialty distributors have been acquired historically, this is as a percentage of the overall transaction activity, you see that at 16%, specialty distributors are right in the wheelhouse of where activity has been historically. And again, we are expecting somewhat of an uptick coming into the second half of 2020. Now, when it comes to valuations, this is another question that we often get in terms of how have valuations been impacted as a result of the pandemic. And largely speaking, with the buyer demand remaining high and robust, although the transaction activity is somewhat being elongated, the overall demand is still there from the buyer side, and firms continue to come to the market on the sell side. Valuations, in a nutshell, are staying pretty consistent with the historic highs that we saw pre-pandemic. That being said, we have noticed in certain instances that buyers are getting much more particular about what do the next 12 months of revenue look like compared to the historical norm of, let's base our pro forma EBITDA off of historical last 12 months. So there is a higher level of discretion being applied by buyers in the marketplace, and that is being reflected in deal structure. For example, there might be longer live-outs or holdbacks that are held up front. But again, in large, valuations are holding up pretty nicely. Join us next month when we talk about private equity and how they are driving transaction activity in the marketplace and some of the catalysts that are encouraging their ongoing activity. As we like to say at MarshBerry, we like to help our clients to learn, improve, and realize value. We are happy that you joined us today and look forward to talking to you again next month. Be well.